for joining us. And I'm Paula. I'm the founder and director of Exam Officers and Data Solutions Limited. I set up the company nearly 7 years ago now, after being involved in the exams arena for many years. And today I'm joined by Barry. Barry, do you just want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Oh yeah, I'm Barry. I've worked in education for the past 30 years as a teacher, a Senko, and an exams access arranger. I now work at a further education college in the Northwest, as well as running my own business, the exams access arrangements assessor.
Fabulous. And there's not many people that can talk about exams and access arrangements as much as me. And then I met Barry. And I know you did a guest blog for us recently, Barry, that's had some really great feedback. So delighted we can just do this podcast, dive a little bit deeper into access arrangements. I think one of the concerns that we're picking up this year is this new wording within the JCQ publications, just saying, before contacting the JCQ or awarding bodies, Senkos must ensure that the relevant documents have been checked, because the answer to many queries can be found within those documents. That seems to indicate that the JCQ and awarding body are getting a lot of from Senkos, from assessors. Are the regulations and requirements getting that complex that they need support, or are they just finding they've got nowhere else to turn for a definite answer?
I do think there's not that many places to turn. I mean, there are lots of forums on Facebook, LinkedIn, but they tend to have some conflicting solutions sometimes. Uh, the when I did the real training update, Nick Late said quite clearly that the Senko will make a decision, and as long as the evidence is there, in the Form 8 or the Form 9, then whatever the access arrangements is will be applied. I think it's trying to put a lot of onus back onto the school, because the teachers know the student a lot better than an inspector that comes in on the day, or poor old Nick Late at the JCQ who's answering all these emails. Um, the new way the booklet's set out, the guidance is set out, I think is a lot better. Um, there's I think there's 30 odd changes this year, and they're all hyperlinked, which makes it a lot easier to find information. So yeah, it's getting better anyway, the information, and I think the onus definitely needs to go back onto the school and the FE college, because we're the person or the place that knows the student well.
Right, fabulous. And one of the questions that, and it was quite an interesting topic a couple of weeks ago on one of the exam professional communities that we run online, we're saying, with students within schools and colleges with reasonable adjustments, access arrangements, but how are we supporting them how is that supporting them when they take that next step in their journey of life and start work or go on an apprentice? How are we supporting taking that forward?
I mean, I do a lot of work with apprentices, and at the moment, I'm training to become a reasonable adjustments in the workplace assessor. It's very interesting how there's still a lot of onus on the 25% extra time. Um, there are some really good changes this year. The three ones I thought were fantastic were the use of a countdown timer. We can have a timer set on a student's desk.
Mm.
Students struggle at the moment, well, struggle to tell a time on an analog clock because we're all digital. And because if you can't see an analog clock or use an analog clock, you find it very hard with the concept of time. You can't see. Digital clock tells you the time right then. An analog, you can see forwards and backwards. So students do struggle with that concept of time. I think the timer on a desk is a great move forward. The introduction of non-electronic headphones being centre delegated, brilliant, great. And also listening to music has been made much easier to apply for. You still need to complete a Form 9 for it. You still need some medical evidence. However, it is useful for lots of students to ground them. Students that are neurodiverse, it definitely is a strategy that I've seen written in many HCPs and many diagnoses. So I think in terms of moving forward, I think there's some really positive changes this year. they're the changes that can be taken into the workplace. But still, I think there's a lack of strategies in school that we can use in the workplace. 25% is still this golden egg that, oh, this will help all our exams. I did a little bit of research on this. The extra 25% extra time is mentioned 121 times in 127 pages in the guidance. A time was mentioned 7 times, music's 5 times, and non-electronic headphones is 3. So the things that we can take forward into the workplace don't have much of a mention, and we're still relying on the extra time. If I'm a parent looking up at exam access arrangements and I look in the JCQ guidelines, I'm just hit with extra time. So we're not pushing the strategies that we can use hard enough.
Yeah. And I think the use of assistive technology as well will help people go from school and college into the workplace. Things like computer readers, reading pens that employers can provide.
Reading pens massive. That's a really really useful tool. I worked with an apprentice who recently her employers bought a reading pen for them so that they can print off emails and use the reading pen to help them in their daily life. They didn't have a reading pen at school, unfortunately, they had a human reader, but that they're actually now able to use the assistive technology to help them in work. And that's what we need to be looking for. It's the assistive technology to use in school to create independent learners, to create people that can work on their own to take that forward into the workplace.
Brilliant. And I think one of the things, as we said, a lot of the changes this year in the access arrangements really helping students, really helping learners. But for exam professionals, invigilators, learning support teams that help out in the morning or the afternoon of exams, there's more responsibility on them for equipment checking within already what is a really close turnaround. Exams officers can't open the papers till a certain amount of time before the exam starts. Then if the school is still using coloured, got to be copied onto yellow, blue, green. And now we've got everything else to check. We're checking whether they're non-electronic headphones, whether they're electronic headphones, the batteries in the clocks. Has the clock got any memory stored in it? It's just, we're really helping students, but what about the staff that are managing it on the ground? How are we supporting them to be able to put these things into place for students?
It's the discussion we've been having in the FE college I work at. We're trying to move students away from the colour paper to using overlays, because if you're using an overlay, you can check, you can you can move it anywhere you want to. You take it with you. You use it on a train when you're reading your book. So it's something that's a lot more compatible with everyday life. Changing the colour of a computer screen if you're doing an online test as well, or if you're using a laptop. So those are two good things that, rather than the stresses of photocopying the paper onto lots of different colours. Reader pens as well that need to be charged. We've now looking at buying the cheaper version on Amazon rather than the exam pens. The exam team stores the exam pens for use in an exam, and we're going to experiment with using some of the cheaper pens from Amazon. They work in exactly the same way. There's no difference. Right. Then there's a few. If you keep the exam pens with the exam team, they make sure they're charged and you use them on exam day. Clocks as well. Students can use clocks in the classroom, and then the exam team are going to keep their own store of clocks to make sure that they're not touched. Again, to make sure the batteries are charged. The initial outlay might be slightly higher than we'd want to, but in the long term, the time saving and making sure that students have a more positive exam experience, I think, is far outweighs the initial cost.
I think that's a brilliant idea, to have duplicates of everything, so the students have theirs for within as their normal way of working within the classroom, and then the exams team have them. And as we say to the centres we support, make sure you've got enough invigilators trained in computer readers, they're trained to set up the reading pen and check it, and make sure they're in early enough to be able to do all these checks. It was quite interesting the other day, because we was talking about checking playlists, and somebody said, right, that what they're thinking of doing is having 3 playlists that students can pick from. So rather than each student saying, right, I want this playlist, and them having to listen to them all, they will say, right, there's playlist A available, playlist B, and playlist C. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm not sure I totally agree with the different playlists to listen to, but again, another conversation around this. If a student can give you their playlist on Spotify or Amazon Music, you know that it's not going to be something that the students made. You know that halfway through a CD, it's not going to be them suddenly reciting equations. So if you get it from a reputable source, I think that you can download. Well, I don't think you can download the playlist onto a computer, unplug it from the internet, and then a student can use wired headphones to listen to the playlist that way. I've recently been given a 20-song playlist from a very young student, and I've listened to a few songs, but I really don't want to listen to any more because it's really not my taste. So I think if we're looking at download from a reputable source, that's going to take a lot of the hassle away of the music side of that.
Right, brilliant. Okay. I mean, I think there'll be a lot more feedback after the November sort of GCSE resits that I know a lot of colleges high volume exams. So it'll be interesting to see the feedback from exam professionals and invigilators about how that's gone around the new rules and regulations. I know last year we ended up with quite a lot of versions of the JCQ publications. They kept updating them, and we've never really seen that previously. But last year we seemed to go in quite a quick turnaround over the different versions.
Yeah, there definitely was. Yeah.
Yeah, an interesting few months ahead. Well, thank you for joining us today, Barry. And I'm sure we'll be back again with another podcast on access arrangement and exams.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Paula. Cheers. Bye now.